1930s was a time of great change. The world was recovering from World War I, and the little town of Colebrook, nestled in the Connecticut River Valley, had its share of hardships and good times.
We have interviewed a number of people who lived in the Colebrook area in the 1920s and 1930s. Each one was asked a series of questions concerning the major national events of that time, the Depression and Prohibition, as well as local events including the flood of 1929, town activities, family life, and school days. Here is the way they remember their life during that time period.
It was a very close family group. The family I grew up in was very similar to the Waltons, if you can remember television, those people. My grandparents lived with us, and they took as much care of us children as our parents did. I mean, we were a very large family group. They were very popular when I was a kid.
What is a kitchen junket?
Well, a kitchen junket. All the neighbors would gather and move the kitchen stove out of the kitchen. All the kitchens in the country were large, because that was where you did your living, was in the kitchen. And they move the furniture out of the room, take it all out in the yard, and bring in the fiddler, and have dances, the square dances. I mean, really. Rob McKegg, he was an old man at that time, but he was a very noted fiddler, country fiddler, and he was always the man who was called in to do the playing. We were relatively untouched by it. I mean, we never went hungry, we never went cold, we never went without something to wear. Always managed to pay the taxes, do the things that had to be done. There really wasn't a great deal of cash around, as I recall. Christmases were provided. If you got a hanky for Christmas, that was a nice gift. So, fortunate. In fact, this whole area was fortunate. I mean, neither one of our banks were closed on account of the bank holiday. The bank in Groveton, of course, folded up at that time and had to be refinanced later. But our financial condition right here in this area was really pretty good. Prohibition didn't seem to affect the people who liked to drink a great deal. They always were able to find it. Many people, not many people, but some people made home brew all through the time. I mean, homemade beer was a standard thing in many households. Bathtub gin for the more sophisticated was produced. In Bloomfield, Vermont particularly, was known locally as Little Canada, because so many of the people down there dealt in illicit booze. Really, I couldn't name names, but it wouldn't be apropos. But there hadn't been very much smuggling across the border. I mean, people came and went. It was a very casual thing. But once the barriers went up at the custom houses, then everybody sought ways to get past it, and many people made their living, and a very good living. It was the 2 lakes at the Balsams going out. Way back at the time, Mr. Hale had developed those lakes and built the dam. Addison Frizzell, who was an old-timer at that time, told the man that those lakes would never hold a spring flood. And he was right. The things lasted for 20 years or so, but eventually they gave way. And about 56 homes were damaged, and something like 17 were completely wiped out of town. I know the house I lived in, on Parsons Street. The floors never dried out quite evenly afterwards, and everybody's cellar had to be scraped out of muck and so on. And I remember Stell Stevens' piano. It has sat in the house forever and never been played, because none of the family played it. And it was eventually sold. And I remember when Stuart Frizzell went to tune it after it was sold, he took off the bottom part of the piano, and about so far up on the strings, the entire inside of the piano was nothing but just solid, dried mud that had been there for 15 years. Thrown over trying to dry them out and clean them up and so on. It was a real mess. And the house that sat where the present fire station is the house that Haynes lives in now on Lombard Street. The house was moved from the fire station lot over onto that street, and the man that owned the house said, I'm going to leave it there. So he bought the lot and left the house there, just built a new basement part. But I can remember coming into town, seeing all the mud and so on, and great chunks of ice that came down too, with the litter in the street, covering the Academy lawn and everything else. It was just at nightfall, and so nobody got any pictures of the actual waters themselves coming through. But
you could get just so much meat with those tokens. And, well, it didn't affect us as much as you might think for, though, because we never had very big wages. And, I was made do with what we had rather than, we had to, well, we wore our shoes just long as we could, and sometimes put cardboard in the bottom of the soles for a while, but we got along. My husband was alive, and we had a restaurant where Dora's store is now. And the night he was busy. He worked nights, and he was busy and took in more money during the night work than the girls did in the daytime, because all the people from down in the mountains, Bretton Woods and the Fabians and Mount Washington, the chauffeurs and different ones would come up at night and get a load to take back. They'd go to Canada, of course.
Yeah.
First went to rural school, and it was down on the other side of the river in Leamington. And then when I was in the 8th grade, they decided to send us over here to school and not have a school there anymore. So then I walked over to school. I always walked to school.
Flood in 29.
Yes, we were lucky enough to have been warned ahead of time that the dam had broken and the town might be flooded. And so we were able to go to a higher spot where water did not reach. But the water came into Main Street and destroyed some records, and it took some houses along the way. And it took a while to get cleaned up, but the Red Cross came and did a lot of work that time. The Red Cross was very useful, very helpful.
How about the hurricane in 38? Was it as bad or worse?
There was lots more wind and a lot of trees were destroyed, but there wasn't as much water damage in Colebrook Village as there had been at the time of the flood. But there was a lot of damage because a lot of trees went down and houses were damaged, and a great amount of wood was damaged at that time. They had quite a few bootleggers around. quite a few people dealt in hard liquor. It was kind of an exciting time because there was always a policeman going on at school. Even though we were in a one-room school, there were parties, and there were Christmas parties, and we had plays, and we did quite a few things at the local Grange Hall. And as the school children got older, of course, and got out of school, there were dances, and the Grange had goings on, which were interesting, and we made a lot of our own entertainment.
Affect the bank much?
Yes, the bank was closed for a week, and as all banks were, and then it was rather a nervous week because nobody knew whether they were going to be reopened or not. But we were notified that we could open, and business went on as usual. The Winter Carnival was a real big event in Colebrook. There was a parade, and there were lots of floats. It was like a 4th of July float as far as the parade went, only it was wintry. And then there were plays and musicals and ski jumping. And the ski jump was up on what we called Hicks Hill. And international skiers came and local skiers came and jumped. And there was a hockey team then. And I believe they dressed up in costume.
One for several years, and we had this very peppy teacher come, Betty Headley from North Conway, and she was our coach, and she got us to going, and we used to practice at the town hall. We had to pay $100 a year for the use of town hall. And we'd go down to practice at 4 o'clock, and the old man would just be coming round the corner where the town hall is today to build the fires. And oh, it was freezing cold there. And we'd practice, one night we'd practice early, and the boys would practice late, and the next night we only practiced an hour each night. And we didn't have any suits, and we made our own suits, and I showed you the picture, you know, of our suits. And the home ec department, and everybody worked on them, and we exposed about 2 inches from the knee guard to the bottom of the pants, and oh, they were horrified, the people in town, to think we were going down there and show our legs.
We were out of school for a few days, I know. The cellar of the high school was completely full of mud and water. And we always said that's the reason we passed physics and chemistry, because the labs were down there, and all the teachers' books with their marks and so forth were down there. So
That's right. Study hall. And the bank wasn't there, and the library wasn't there at first. And they went up through the street, the Border Patrol chasing a load of liquor that was going to Boston, and they were shooting right at the tires as they went up through the main street. And we sat right there in the study hall, Francis and I, and saw that. Friday night, they didn't start till 8 o'clock because everybody had to do chores, right? Then after the girls would play half their game, then the boys would play their half, and then, you see, they'd repeat that. And after the game was over, we had a band, and the one the boys used, and the one on the left was the one that the girls used. And you never, ever went up that boys' walk. That was a no-no. And the girls' basements were down here, and the boys were down here, and you never crossed over. And you assembled in what you call the study hall. They called it the main room. You assembled there, and everybody had a desk there. It was about 100 in the high school then, maybe 110 or 12. So everybody had a desk in there. And then when the bells rang, you went out to your various classes, and all the study halls were held in that room. But they were most all the desks fastened down to the floor, too, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you first went there as a freshman, there was a watering trough over there by Dean Howard's, where that square is now, and they took the kids over there and ducked them. Made them come back and walk up through the study hall. You remember, we would go down there and get grain, and in the fall my father would always buy 2 barrels of apples and a barrel of sugar and a barrel of flour. And we'd go down and get that and take it up the farm, you know.
How did that?
Well, the first radio I ever saw, they had over to high school, and that must have been 1924 or 25, and they invited people in to listen to it. And I remember...
I was in Traders Bank now, and that was where there were apartments up there at that time, and one of the apartments is where the LeVars lived. And Jack Babar was in our class. And
Oh, he was.
And they had, and George, he and his brother George, had a radio, and we, with the earphones, and we went over and we put those on. There'd be probably 6 or 8 people there anyway, listening, and we'd take turns listening.
What was it like during the Depression?
Well, during the Depression came, I was getting $24 a week. I got cut from 24 down to 18. And the guy I worked with at the slaughterhouse, every afternoon we butchered, you know. And I worked all summer with him, and I wasn't going to let another, I don't know what. I said to him the wages, and he said, well, I got a raise last spring. I said, I didn't. So I went right back to the store that afternoon. The next morning, and I gave him a notice. And the guy said, well, come. Well, I said, I butcher with him every day. I know I ain't worth as much he is. So he gave me a raise back up $21 a week.
How about the flood of 1929?
Well, I was going to school, and then my brother was working down the store. And the water come down. It took 2 houses out right there where the, well, you going to town, and there was a garage there, and took that out. And it took the bridge out over on Pleasant Street. See, school didn't keep for a few days, and I had a job of, because the river run right down Main Street. And I had a job of directing traffic down on Bridge Street and send them around by Monadnock Street. God, that whole damn section down through there was a mess. And I've seen jams of ice come right down Academy Street, and I've seen right back around on the Academy lot in back, and I've seen ice 3 feet deep down in there. There was some of the guys went out to watch it go out, and that had an 18-inch cement core on the inside of it. And when it started, God, it went. Took them hunks of cement clear into Colebrook. And swept right down through there. My God, that was an off-looking valley back in them days. Glory. And people they got right back out of town. They had to. Yeah. That was 1929.
About Prohibition, can you tell me any stories or exciting events?
Well, yes, there was a bunch of outlaws from Lyndonville, Vermont, by the name of Parker Gang. And they come into Colebrook, going to clean it up. They got into Keach's restaurant, and they got fighting with him.
Yeah.
Of course, the 3 or 4 of them got the best of them. And anyway, finally, they got hold of them somehow or other. I don't know whether they got out of town or whether they arrested them or not, or what it was. But then there was a Banfield, George Banfield, Freddie's father, was a bootlegger. And he had a bootlegging joint across the road in Vermont. So if you wanted that liquor, you went over there and got it. And there was a fellow in there by the name of Swat. And I used to have to go to him every day and get a pint for a fellow down the bone alley. And this guy had bad legs, he had to go with crutches. So every noon hour I'd go up there, sometimes another guy and I used to go up there and bowl a couple of strings during the noon hour. But I had to go over there and get him a pint of whiskey. And then we had one old lady who used to buy vanilla. She'd get drunk on vanilla. But she said, I make a lot of cakes. And we weren't supposed to sell her only 1 or 2 bottles, but she had the money, they sold her all she wanted. And next thing you know, she'd be drunk in hell on Main Street.
I guess I'm all set.
That's enough, huh?
Well, I covered just about everything.
Good.
We hope this presentation has been enjoyable, as well as informative.
We would like to thank those we filmed, as well as those who gave their time for audio interviews.
And a special thanks to Nancy's Video for the use of their equipment. Very nice.
That's the way we did it in the old days.
On the bone alley. And this guy had bad legs, had to go with crutches. So every noon hour I'd go up there. Sometimes another guy and I used to go up there and bowl a couple of strings during the noon hour. But I had to go there and get him a pint of whiskey. And then we had one old lady who used to buy vanilla. She'd get drunk on vanilla. But she said, I make a lot of cakes. And we weren't supposed to sell only 1 or 2 bottles, but she had the money, they sold her all she wanted. And next thing you know, she'd be drunk in hell on Main Street.
I guess I'm all set.
That's enough, huh?
Well, I covered just about everything.
Good.
We hope this presentation has been enjoyable, as well as informative.
We would like to thank those we filmed, as well as those who gave their time for audio interviews.
And a special thanks to Nancy's Video for the use of their equipment.